This is a companion episode to the podcast on all about tripods that I have on the Wild Photographer podcast, which you can find on any podcast platform, just the Wild Photographer. So this is by way to show you some of the things I was talking about in that episode. First up, starting with the pièce de résistance, my favorite tripod out there. I've searched far and wide, and we talked about a lot of different types of tripods, the legs, the tripod heads, the whole unit. And I wanted to start off with what I think is the absolute best. So my favorite tripod right now is the Peak Design carbon fiber tripod. You can see it right here in all its glory. It's an absolutely amazing tripod. It is carbon fiber. It's very small and lightweight. You can see here, as I hold it up to the screen, just how big or small this is. This comes with me almost everywhere now because it's so easy to pack. It's so tiny. It's so lightweight. This must weigh, I don't know, less than 2 pounds, and it's a fully functioning tripod. It extends well over 4 feet, probably even 5 feet with the stem here. It's got a universal Arca plate on top, and it's just incredible. The other thing I wanted to show you is the clamp system of a lot of tripods, which I can show you here, works just like this. You unclip it, and you can extend, you clamp it, and it's rock solid. This is in opposition to the twist or the loosen, tighten type tripod legs that I'm personally not a big fan of. So I like the clamp system. I think it's easy to use even with gloves or mittens if you're shooting in the cold, and it's really, really darn sturdy. The other thing I wanted to show you about this tripod is it has an integrated tripod head right in it. So a lot of fancier, more pro-level tripods have the legs sold separately from the head, or at least they're bought or coordinated and configured as 2 separate units. This one, because it's so slick, so streamlined, there's a nice ball head right in the tripod itself. You loosen like this, and now it swivels on an entire axis here for any sort of angle for your photography. So while some of the bigger, fancier tripods do have an entire separate head that'll screw on to the legs itself, this just fits in perfectly. It helps with it being small, lightweight, very, very packable, and I found it to be perfect for all my photo needs. Next up, I wanted to show you what that Arca mount is, or that Arca plate for a lot of tripods. And this is one made by Peak Design. It's a very small, very easy to pack, very easy to attach little square plate. You just use a little Allen wrench that comes with it. And this is what actually mounts to the bottom of your camera right here. There are various types of Arca plates that are all the same size and same dimension, but I find that the Peak Design one is really, really darn easy. And of course, since I use a Peak Design tripod, it fits seamlessly. Next up, I want to show you the 3 different type of tripod heads. And I'm starting with my favorite, probably the more obscure. It's known as the pistol grip ball head. You can see here, this is probably one of the more obscure, so I'm really glad I'm able to show you on video. But you can see here, it truly has what looks like a pistol grip. And the brilliance here is that it functions just like a ball head, this ball and socket. This is the part that mounts to the tripod. And with one hand, as I squeeze it, it loosens the ball head. I can move it any which way or shape or form, up, down, left, right, any sort of angle, even go from landscape to portrait if I'm holding this down and it's attached to a tripod. But also the great thing is as soon as I release it, like so, it clamps onto the ball head, so I'm not having to loosen and tighten with one hand while I hold my camera and steady it with the other. One-handed use is really, really nice. So I love the pistol grip ball head. This is made by Manfrotto. The other tripod head I did want to show is the pan fluid or pan tilt ball head. It's a beast, as you can see here. This is why I'm not a huge fan of it. Is it's got this massive arm, although it does work really, really well for pan and tilt. For photography, this is not so good, especially travel photography. This is a lot to handle. It's pretty heavy. This probably weighs as much as my Peak Design tripod in itself. And like I mentioned in the podcast episode, a lot of pan tilt heads actually have 2 of these bars. This one is configured such that it only has 1, but you can imagine if it had a second one of these, how much even more cumbersome it would be. Nevertheless, though, the big caveat is for video work, these things are absolutely amazing because this little mechanism in here that rotates as well as the up and down is very, very, very fluid. So you can actually move it with slight adjustments and it won't make for shaky video. It's a nice fluid movement. And so these things are great. I'm really just showing it because I wanted you to understand the 3 different types of tripod heads, this being one of them, but not one that I use for photography. Last but not least, I'm going to show you the good old-fashioned ball head. And this is a bit of a twofer here. I'm going to also show you and talk about my GorillaPod maybe even a threefer. I'm going to show you my Desmond plate here that holds my Arca plate, which I use for tripods. And it's a nice quick release plate for here as well. So I can always use the same plate no matter what sort of ball head I have. So this little thing right here is the ball head. You loosen it like this, and now it can rotate in any direction. You tighten it, but you can see here it flops over if you're not holding it. So again, two-handed, tighten it, and then voila, you have a nice rock solid grip there. This thing does come off. If you were to twist it, you can move this into different tripods. But then the GorillaPod itself is the next thing I wanted to show you. This little articulating arm, octopus looking thing, a trioctopus. I don't know, what is an octopus with 3 legs? I feel like there's a joke in there somewhere. But basically I wanted to show you, this is my go-to really, really lightweight. This is something I'm using when I'm hiking really long distances and don't want to carry a big tripod, or I don't need a tripod. First and foremost, if I don't need a big tripod, I don't know if there's going to be tripod scenes, but I want to have something just as a backup. This thing is very manual. You just move it to separate the 3 legs. You put a little ball head on here with this nice Desmond plate, and all of a sudden I have a tripod that gets very, very close to the ground, but it's kind of like an emergency backup. But I do love these GorillaPods. They're super stable, super sturdy. They were first meant to use these arms. You can see here, I'm just bending it. You can wrap these around like fence posts or signs or anything that might, a tree that might be in your area to use to get it above ground. I frankly don't use it like that. I find it's a little bit hard, but nevertheless, that's kind of the original intention. But what I like so much about it is it's just super lightweight, really sturdy, and quite modular because I can put this small little ball head on here. So yeah, ball head, really cool plate, and GorillaPod. Before I move on from the really cool plate, I wanted to show you, this is made by a company called Desmond. It's the DAC60, DAC60. And this is just a really easy twist locking mechanism to put that plate, which is permanently affixed to the bottom of my camera, just on this ball head. That way I'm not having to use the little quick release plate that came with the GorillaPod. This way I have one plate on my camera at all times, and it always can fit on any tripod that I'm using, even this GorillaPod. And finally, what I'm really most excited about right now is my new incredible backpack from Shimoda Designs. This thing is absolutely incredible. I think it's going to be my new favorite backpack for the rest of time, and I just can't say enough good things about it. I've tested it, I've trialed it, I've packed it, I've unpacked it. This thing's incredible. You access your camera gear from the back panel here. You have all sorts of laptop storage up here, and it is waterproof with this classic kind of cinch down top. And you can even see here, you have the backpack straps. You have all sorts of extra iPhone carrying cases on the front. It's pretty darn amazing. So wanted to show that off as well. So again, if you haven't listened to the full podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast, and type in The Wild Photographer, and you're going to see all my episodes on everything nature and wildlife photography. Thanks so much for tuning in.